Warning, playing FPL is highly addictive. It may cause stress, a loss of free time, a resentment towards friends or colleagues, and a dislike to football in general. Please, FPL responsibly.
Hey guys, and welcome back to FPL TV. Today is the second day of the official FPL price reveals, with FPL releasing another 5 teams' prices with 11 players from each team. So let's get straight into it and have a look at some of these prices. The first team up is Wolves, who started last season in fairly solid fashion, before then fading out in the second half and generally looking uninterested. So there's big question marks here on just how they'll open up their new campaign. At 7 million, their most expensive asset this season is forward Raul Jimenez, and that may be a fairly hard sell to begin things, only considering how much Wolves struggled in front of goal last season. Last year, what Wolves really lacked was a goal threat, only managing to score 38 times, the 4th lowest in the division. This was worsened only by Watford, Burnley and Norwich, all 3 of which ended up relegated. Not good numbers. As a counter-argument though, it is worth noting that Wolves do open up their new campaign with some very appealing fixtures, facing Leeds, Fulham and Bournemouth in 3 of their opening 5, so certainly a good chance of some goals there. For this reason, a Wolves attacker may not be out of the question, and there could be some very good value on offer here given their prices. There's Hwang at 6 million, who's now been reclassified as a midfielder, and further budget mids, Podence and Neto, with Pedro Neto in particular a very interesting option there at a very nice 5.5. I am surprised, however, to see Ruben Neves priced at the same here at 5.5 though, considering his considerably lower goal threat than Neto and Podence, so I was expecting 5 million for him. What Wolves can sometimes offer us though is a fairly decent defence, and although they only kept 11 clean sheets last season, they did only concede 43 goals. Only Spurs, Chelsea, Man City and Liverpool conceded fewer. With that considered, and given their kind run of opening fixtures, a Wolves defender is certainly on the radar for me, and Johnny in particular at 4.5 million with his added attacking threat is one I'll keep an eye on. Next up for the price reveals is the very much anticipated Liverpool prices, so let's see what FPL have given us. As expected, Mo Salah is of course the most expensive asset, starting the season at 13 million, the game's most expensive player. The height of Mo Salah's price isn't a surprise, but what is on the other hand is the very generous pricing of the teammates around him, with Luis Diaz perhaps the biggest shock for me. Diaz comes in at a very affordable 8 million, at least 1 million less than the 9 million valuation I was expecting. This to me screams excellent value, a whole 5 million cheaper than Mo Salah, especially now with Sadio Mane having left the club, surely solidifying Diaz's place further in this side. A very tempting option, no doubt. As for the ever-popular defenders, well, no change here from last year's prices, which too for me is a bit of a surprise, particularly Trent Alexander-Arnold, who finished the season at around 8.4 million last year, so I thought an 8 million starting price here could have been possible. Given their consistency as FPL assets for a good few years now, 7.5 million, 7 and 6.5 for Trent, Robbo and Van Dijk respectively are all excellent value as per. Another big surprise for me here is the also very generous pricing of goalkeeper Alisson, who's now dropped to 5.5 million. This one for me is a very interesting move from FPL, because clearly they're trying to tempt us into opting for Alisson, who over the years hasn't really been a popular FPL asset. Don't get me wrong, at 6 million he was still a solid option, but we have to remember just how valuable one of our 3 Liverpool FPL slots are. At this new price of 5.5 million, he's certainly more appealing to take up that precious 3rd spot, bank some clean sheets and save some cash along the way. The underwhelming price for me is probably Diogo Jota, who unsurprisingly has now been reclassified as a forward too. He's been given a massive 2 million price hike, which in my personal opinion doesn't make too much sense, considering the likes of Robertson, Alexander-Arnold and Van Dijk all outscored him in FPL last year, and they didn't even rise half a million. Opting for Jota at 9 million now is very difficult when you have the likes of Robertson for 2 million cheaper. New signing Darwin Núñez also has the price of 9 million, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets on and if he'll be worth taking up that 3rd Liverpool spot in our side. Difficult to imagine with all the value here elsewhere, but let's see. The next team with price reveals to look at today is Aston Villa, with their most expensive asset Watkins coming in as a 7.5 million forward. On a personal level, I'm not quite sure where Villa stand in my FPL considerations just yet. Let's just say at this early stage, I'm not particularly bowled over by their options, but I guess part of that is down to owning Coutinho at the back end of last season and not getting much in return. The Brazilian keeps his very fair price of 7 million, and there's no doubting his ability, so when a good run of fixtures does hit, he'll no doubt be in my thoughts. However, with that said, there was one player that I was very interested in discovering his valuation before the price reveals, and that was Matty Cash, who comes in at a very nice 5 million. After his superb FPL season last year, I wouldn't have been surprised to see him valued at 5.5, but FPL continue their trend with these very affordable prices. Cash ended last season as the 8th highest scoring defender in FPL, but it's worth noting all 7 above him were from Chelsea, Liverpool and Man City, so he did excellently to be the best of the rest and also scored 4 goals. Importantly, Matty Cash also played all 38 games in the league, and that is key in my consideration of FPL assets. His nailedness and fondness to get forward is very promising at 5 million. As mentioned, no other prices here are particularly screaming value to me, but who knows, it's still very early days. The likes of Buendia and Danny Ings could provide great value if they do get a consistent run in the team. Next up for the price reveals is Manchester United, and this should be interesting. Following what was undoubtedly a season to forget last season for the Red Devils, there's no surprise to see a significant drop in prices for many of their players. To be fair, that was to be expected, but I think what surprised me most is just how much they've dropped, which seems to be a pattern here with FPL's pricing this year. Despite United's season to forget, there's some potentially very, very good value here, and if new manager Ten Hag can get a tune out of them, then United players could very suddenly be extremely appealing options. We've got Sancho here at 7.5 million, a very good price for a hopefully improved second season, and also Rashford, classed as a midfielder, getting a huge drop of 3 million from last year's valuation, an absolute plunge of a price change. Who'd have thought 1 year ago that players like Bamford, Jimenez and Toney would be more expensive than Rashford in FPL? Madness. If he somehow does find some form this season, then what a nifty budget midfielder he could be at 6.5, on the watch list for sure. Ronaldo stays their most expensive player, with him too getting a fairly big drop down to 10.5, whilst Bruno Fernandes drops to 10. For Bruno's output last season, I was kind of hoping for a slightly bigger drop, maybe down to a very tempting 9 million. But even at 10, I still think he can be a very handy option at some point of the season, and will likely provide us with a very interesting differential. As for their defence, well, there's not too much change here, with the likes of Shaw, Telles and De Gea all keeping their 5 million valuation, and with so much great value elsewhere for FPL defenders so far, there'll probably be a wait and see for me. The 5th and final team for the price reveals to look at today is our first promoted team Fulham, and I think there's one price in particular that many are interested in, and that's Championship record-breaking goal scorer Mitrovic. He comes in at a very appealing 6.5 million. In fairness, the better promoted strikers almost always come in at this price anyway, with 6.5 million being heavily predicted for Mitrovic, so not much of a surprise here. But considering just how many he did score last year, a part of me thought he may start the game at 7. The Serb scored a whopping 43 goals last season in the Championship, an absurd number. And even if he has been a bit hit or miss in FPL for past seasons, that number still deserves a lot of respect in my opinion. At 6.5 million, he's certainly worthy of consideration for our starting squads, nailed on penalties, but we mustn't forget that Fulham do open their campaign against Liverpool, not to mention games away to Wolves and Arsenal in their opening 5. He is too a bit of a yellow card magnet, picking up 10 last season. Harry Wilson was another huge part of Fulham's promotion success, and over the past few years, he's very much been considered in the same ilk as Mitro, that is, too good for the Championship but maybe not enough for the Premier League. Perhaps as a fellow Welshman I'm a bit biased here, but I do think that tag is a tad unfair, and with Wilson now a lot more valued, trusted and relied upon in this Fulham team, I can see him having a decent season. He hit double figures for goals and assists in the Championship last year, with his 19 assists being the highest of the division. It's also interesting to note that Wilson to Mitrovic was the most common goal combination of the Championship last year, so on the official FPL Twitter account, we could be seeing a lot of goal Mitrovic, assist Harry Wilson. I guess in FPL terms, the only issue here is their pricing, because FPL have given us such great prices to other players in better teams that 6 million for Wilson and 6.5 for Mitro may be a bit of a stretch. Perhaps ones to watch once they hit a kind run of fixtures. So that wraps up part 2 of the player price reveals, and if you did enjoy this video, please support my channel by leaving a like and most importantly getting subscribed. You can also hit the notification bell, and then you'll be notified immediately when part 3 of the price reveals goes live. If you didn't catch it already, you can also see part 1 of the price reveal mini-series on the screen now, which you can click, which I uploaded yesterday. I'll catch you all tomorrow, providing there are more price reveals, so until then, FPL responsibly and I'll see you all very soon.